So in today's session, we are going to learn about how can we basically start a perfect introduction, which is paraphrasing. And we are going to learn everything related to introduction, what are the synonyms, why is it important to paraphrase. So all of that will be covered in today's session. Now, as I already told you, the content of the IELTS essay introduction would be covered over here, and we would also be looking at whether a hook statement or an opening statement is necessary. How to paraphrase and how to write a thesis statement as well will be covered in the session. Now, when we talk about an introduction is an important part of the essay because it creates an impression about the quality of your writing style. So whenever the examiner will look at what you have written as an introduction, he would be able to make an impression, or he would be able to understand what could be the content of your essay. So there are certain things that you have to keep in mind whenever you are making or writing the introduction. The first thing is to understand the question. So we say that you have to spend time to analyze the question, because in the writing task 2 you will have several parts to answer. You will not just have one thing to answer. For example, if it is an opinion based essay, you have to paraphrase, you have to give your opinion, and you also have to explain the idea. So there are three things that are required. If it is a non-opinion based essay, you just don't have to give one statement, you have to counter it as well. So that is also needed. So every question will have different parts which needs to be addressed, and understanding those parts is very imperative. And that is the reason why introduction has a lot of importance. Now the next one is to use your own words. When we talk about introduction, you know that there's going to be already something written as the question, but what you need to do is in the answer you do not have to copy the same thing. You have to bring in your originality, and that is what we call as paraphrasing. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that even if the question is there, you are paraphrasing it in your own terms, and you are using synonyms, you are using paraphrasing, so that even though the meaning does not change, it brings your own uniqueness to the answer. And it is also very important for you to remember that a lot of students, they memorize the answers. They memorize a lot of sample essays and then they just write it down in the essay. That is something that you have to steer clear from, because if you write a memorized introduction, the examiner will be able to catch you, and the whole idea of the essay is to bring in your creativity, bring in your uniqueness. The next one is state your clear position. This is true only if it is an opinion based essay. In an opinion based essay where you have to either completely agree or completely disagree, there it's very important that you take a clear position, or you believe in a firm stand. You cannot sit on the fence. You cannot say I partially agree, I partially disagree, because then it will beat the whole purpose of a clear position. So if it is an opinion based essay, you are free to either agree or disagree, but you cannot take a partial stand. Now coming to how to explain, the next is, once you've written the introduction, now you need to and also given your thesis statement, whether you agree or disagree. Now what you need to do is you need to explain how you're going to plan to develop your essay. What you can do is always look at the introduction that you've written. Make sure that even if it is paraphrased, it has not lost its purpose. That means if you are agreeing to it, it is very much clear in the introduction itself. If you disagree with something, it is very much evident in the essay. The hook question should not change. So whenever you're paraphrasing, it should not change the meaning even in the slightest bit. It's okay if you change the sentence structure, if it's okay if you use present to past tense, but it should not change the meaning. That's the whole idea. And then the next thing that you have to do is the next question is what needs to be included in the introduction. So there are several things that you need to contain or you need to write while writing the introduction. The first is a background statement, which is always there in the question. So if the question has a background statement, then only you would write it. Background statement is nothing but it contains information about the hook statement. And the next is a thesis statement. That means your opinion or your answer towards the question that has been asked to you. So the first thing that you have to do is, if there is a background information, that you would write. If there isn't any, so you would just paraphrase the question. And if it is an opinion based essay, you will straight away write your point of position. So, and also make sure that it is at the extreme. So if you agree extremely, like you cannot agree any further, or you are in complete agreement, it should show in the way you write. And similar is the case if you want to disagree, you are free to do that, but it should show it with the way you write. The next is how to analyze when reading the essay topic. So every topic will have certain instructions that you need to follow. Every topic requires you to write, either have an opinion, or you need to write both the sides, or you need to tell whether one side has more power over the other. So how do we analyze when we read the essay topic? If you look over here, the question is, some people believe that children should begin learning a foreign language at primary school rather than secondary school. Do the advantages of this outweigh the disadvantage? So what you have to do is, you have to sit and ask yourself what is to be done. So here is the statement that a lot of people, they learn a foreign language at a primary school rather than secondary school. Okay, so from the very beginning, they start learning a new language. Now, can you tell whether the advantages are more, or if the advantages are more? So if we break it down, there are 3 core steps that you have to do. The first is, you have to realize that children are learning foreign language. The main point is, the question is of primary school versus secondary school. For example, is it more advantageous to start making them learn a new language in the primary school? And if yes, what are the advantages? And if there is any disadvantages, do the advantage outweigh the disadvantage? So there are 3 things that you have to do. Now, all questions will have its own main points, and then there are things that are required for you to do. What you need to do is, you definitely need to understand the task. You have to determine what does this essay requires you to do. In the case where you have to discuss both the advantage as well as disadvantage, what you can do is, you can always generate the idea on a sheet of paper, talk about what are the advantages, talk about what are the disadvantages. So if you look over here, the advantages: early cognitive development, better pronunciation and accent, more time to learn and practice, and enhanced cultural awareness. What could be the disadvantage? Potential academic pressure, lack of qualified teachers, possible neglect of other subjects, and limited immediate use. Because when you learn about a foreign language, you may not be able to use it instantly. Rather, you'll have to find the people who learn it, or who are able to adeptly use that language, and then you can definitely practice it. Now, when you have to develop an idea where you have to talk about both the stands, you need to write equal balance. So on a sheet of paper, before you start writing the essay, always write down the points that you will include in the essay. This helps your essay to be more bounded together. This helps you to form an idea, and also you can tell whether you will include something as an example, or something would be included as the main essay point. So when you write it down, you know which area you can definitely explain more, which are the areas where you can use it as an example, and depending upon how well can you explain a particular idea, you can segregate it. So generating the ideas for both the sides is really important. If it is an opinion-based essay, you just need to generate an idea for that particular side. Now take a position in this question where they said that can you tell whether the advantages outweigh the disadvantage? You definitely need to take a stand. So you have to look at both the points and decide which one do you stand by with. And depending upon, it has to be a clear statement in the essay that explicitly says that what is your point in position, if the question definitely asks you to take a stand. Now, when we talk about creating subpoints, once you have written your main point, you definitely will have to include certain things that you will write in the essay. So while planning itself, you can make subpoints. It does not really take a lot of time, but it will make your essay writing procedure really simple, because you would know what exactly needs to be included and where. Now all you need to do is to develop certain points. So here if you look at it, the advantage has its own briefing, the disadvantage has its own briefing. The advantage, when we look at it, early cognitive development, learning a language early can enhance cognitive skills. Better pronunciation, young children are more adept at picking up accurate pronunciation and accents. Extended learning period starting early provides a longer time frame for practice and mastery. And cultural awareness, early exposure can foster better understanding and appreciation of other cultures. Now when you look at it, now when you have written the subpoints, you can definitely write more about these ideas. You can you can definitely include an example. So how you do that is, before you start writing the essay, you need to write down everything that you would definitely include in the essay. And when we talk about the disadvantage, we have already talked about it, that it has academic pressure. That means it adding language learning might increase pressure on young students. When we talk about qualified teachers, there's definitely when we talk about this qualified teachers, there's always a shortage of qualified foreign language teachers in primary school. Then when we talk about neglect of other subjects, because you have a lot of time to spend on, or you basically will be spending a lot of time in learning a foreign language, so you would not be able to maintain equilibrium about other important subjects. And then limited immediate use, because children might not be able to understand the importance of learning a new language and would definitely not use that particular language if they don't have anyone to practice it with, and over time it might be lost in oblivion. So thinking about everything, you need to decide whether you need to include certain things as main points, or you're just going to include it as your examples. And then once you have everything sorted, you can always start writing the essay. But it is very important that you begin by planning the essay, and then you eventually move on into the writing part. Now the next question is a hook statement or opening statement necessary? A lot of people ask me that, do I need to include an idiom before I start the essay, or do I need to write it in a way where I have to start I have to start with a phrasal verb, or do I need to have a catchy statement? The answer is no. You do not really need to include any hook statement or opening statement, because a hook statement is not necessary, because it adds certain kinds of elements. For example, if you use idioms are mostly used in informal conversation. So and we know that the essay needs to be it needs to be very formal in its nature. So a hook statement is not important. What we need is an introduction and a thesis statement, and that is all, and that should suffice. Now when we talk about why a hook statement is not necessary in IELTS, we know that, a hook statement will generate curiosity, but generation of curiosity is not something which is written in the IELTS band rubrics. So even if you're writing it, it's redundant. The next is, a lot of people think that if they write a hook statement, it will help them improve their band score, but it is, again, when it is not under the marking criteria, whatever you include will be just an added beautification. It will not really have any essence. So do not write the hook statement, because it has no purpose to serve. And the primary focus of any kind of IELTS essay is to see whether the task taker has effectively demonstrated clear position and coherent argument. And it is also important that the examiner has written all the points what are supposed to be written in the essay. The next thing that is very important, that if you are asked to write, if you are asked to take a position, you definitely do that. So if you follow all of these things, you do not really need any extra beautification, and you do not have to write a hook statement or any other idioms or any other kind of phrases that are informal. The next one is just a second. All right. So sorry, it was important. The next is introduction purpose. Whenever we introduce the topic, it should present what is the essence of the essay, and it sets basically nothing but a stage, and then you develop the idea. So when you introduce it perfectly, the examiner will be able to tell what are the content of this essay, and then the extra beautification is definitely not needed. The essay needs to be clear and direct. So the examiner is looking for your ability to precisely explain the ideas, and a straightforward introduction is definitely well enough. You do not have to, add any kind of ornaments to whatever your essay is by adding idioms or phrases. So make it very formal. You do not have to have a hook statement. And also, because time management is something that is very crucial in all the parts of the IELTS. So when you try to make it more beautiful, when you try to include a lot of idioms, you definitely have to think about where to make the idiom sit well. And then definitely it's not included because the essay needs only an introduction, body, and conclusion. So if you make it very direct, it is also completely fine. You do not have to add anything extra, just the basic introduction, your point of view if asked. If not, then you definitely do not have to include it, and then body paragraphs and conclusion. Now the next is how to paraphrase the topic or write a background statement. Although hook statement is not necessary, but what needs to be included is the paraphrasing of the topic. So it means that you need to rephrase the given prompt to show that you definitely understand the topic, and you also set up the tone by giving your own thesis statement. And how can we do that? First is to read and understand the question. So if you do not read the question, you will not be able to really understand what needs to be done. So whenever there is a question, make sure you understand what are the parts, if there are any nuances that you can definitely include. This is a crucial part because this sets the tonality of the essay. Then identify the key words and phrases. That means if the question says to what extent do you agree or disagree, now you need to either agree or disagree. If the question says write down the advantage and disadvantage of something, so you have to write the advantage as well as the disadvantage. You need to be able to identify what exactly needs to be done, and then you have to think of synonyms and paraphrasing, because in the essay you have to really use your own words, and when you use the own words you do not have to change the meaning, so you will have to think about synonyms that you can definitely include. And then yes, you can sometimes change the structure of the essay. For example, they won the match, so the match was won. Or I was given a piece of cake by my friend, so my friend gave me a piece of cake. If you're changing this much sentence structure, it's completely fine, and it actually is required, but it should not again change the idea. The next is combine ideas. If you can include anything more in the prompt version or in the paraphrased version, you can definitely do that. Check for clarity and accuracy. Once you have written the introduction, see whatever you've written, is it making the exact sense as the original idea? And then only thing that you need to include is your point of view. You need to include to what extent do you agree or disagree, and when you do that, you have the perfect statement. Now, if you look at an example, here is an example. Some people believe that children should begin learning a foreign language as primary school rather than secondary school. Do the advantages of this outweigh the disadvantage? Now, what we do is we are going to step by step paraphrase. So first you need to understand the prompt. It is the timing of learning a language and weighing its pros and cons. So, and the key words over here is children, because we're talking about children. Learning a foreign language is the key here because we're talking about the fact that a lot of people or some children, they're learning new language when at primary school instead of secondary school. And what we need to do is we need to discuss the advantage and disadvantage. Now, what you need to do next is you need to find synonyms and paraphrasing. For example, children can be changed to young learners. You can even write adolescents. You can write teenagers, or learning a new language could be changed into acquiring a new language. Primary school could be changed into elementary school. Secondary school could be changed into high school. Advantage could be benefits and disadvantages could be drawbacks. Now once you have written the synonyms, the next thing that you have to do is you need to combine and bind them all together and make your own statement. Now, how to write the thesis statement? A thesis statement is a sentence that shows your argument. So, whether do you agree or disagree, and it provides the roadmap for the examiner to understand what will you cover in the essay, and alongside, if there is your opinion that needs to be included, what is your opinion? It has to be in the introduction itself. So where to include the thesis statement? It has to be included in the introduction itself, and in the introduction your paraphrasing, your thesis statement and your point of position should be extremely clear. Now coming to how to write a thesis statement, the first thing that you have to do is understand the task. Identify whether it's an opinion based essay, discussion based essay, advantage essay, disadvantage essay, problem or solution essay, or double question. Once you've understood the task, you need to identify the main points. What arguments do you need to put forward in the essay? Should the essay directly answer the question? For example, if it is an opinion based essay, you need to give a direct answer. The next is, if you have to take a position. That means if the question wants you to agree or disagree, or you have to clearly state the advantage or disadvantage, you need to clearly definitely state your position. The next one is to be specific and concise. It means you do not have to you do not need to include a very vague language, or you do not need to include a very twisted language. The essay should be very precise, because of course the number of words are also given. You cannot write more than 270 words, so you have to make sure that within 250 to 270 words you have given your statement, you have included the body paragraphs, you have given a conclusion, and you have also written an introduction. And then the last thing is to use appropriate language. Make sure you do not include any informal language in the essay. Neither you can use any inappropriate language. So make sure once you've written the essay, you give it a proofread, and if there is something that is redundant, you definitely obliterate it, you change it. And that's how we basically write a thesis statement. Just give me 1 second. All right. So this is how we write the thesis statement, and we've discussed how to basically write a thesis statement. Now, if we look at this, some people believe that children should begin learning a foreign language. We've read this question. Now, how you will write is, it is often argued by young learners. It is often argued that young learners should start acquiring a new language in elementary school instead of high school, as this has several benefits and drawbacks. This essay will discuss both perspective and argue that the advantages outweigh the disadvantage. Or you can definitely write it as, many argue that young learners should start acquiring a new language in elementary school instead of high school. This essay will explore the benefits and drawbacks of this approach, and ultimately contend that the advantages outweigh the disadvantage. Okay. So once you have written or rewritten the introduction, now you just basically have to expand on the ideas. And now here also you have some examples of thesis statement. For example, if you look over here, children should grow up in countryside than in big city. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? See, again, whenever there is a question of agreement or disagreement, you need to have a very strong belief. So after you have paraphrased the question, your thesis statement is, I strongly believe, or I strongly do not believe in this. And then whatever you have to write, and you need to include the 2 points in the introduction itself. So let's say if you agree with the fact that why do you agree, you have to write. If you disagree with it, you can definitely write the 2 reasons, and then they become the source of your body paragraphs. Okay, the next question is, some people think that the best way to increase road safety is to increase the minimum legal age for driving cars or motorbikes. And again, once you look at this, the next thing is that to what extent do you agree or disagree? Here also, you have to paraphrase the question. You need to give a thesis statement that whether you believe or you do not believe. So look over here. Here it's written that I believe that the other measures such as better driving education and stricter enforcement of um, traffic laws are more effective. So now what I am trying to make sense is, if it is an opinion based essay, you need to paraphrase the question, and after paraphrasing the question, you need to have your own thesis statement. You need to agree or disagree, and that's the only thing that needs to be included in the introduction. Now, the question is how long your introduction should be. It can be, since the introduction comprises of only 10 to 15% of the total word count, so it can be anywhere between 50 to 60 words. Do not make the introduction too long, because it's just there to give you a head start, and the body paragraph needs to be where all of the information is written. So introduction and conclusion should not be more than 70 words long. Okay, now when we can at last summarize what are the kinds of essays that you can expect. The first one is to what extent. It means that you either completely agree or you completely disagree. Do not have partial agreement or disagreement. This is the first type of essay. The next is the advantage or disadvantage. You have problem and solution. You have causes and effect. These are the kinds of questions that you can expect, and in all of these questions, the one thing that remains constant is that you need to start with the paraphrasing of the question. Then if it is an opinion based essay, you need to give your point of view. If not, steer clear from giving any opinion, and then you start writing the content. That is 2 body paragraphs, and once you've written both the body paragraphs, you will have to conclude with a conclusion. Now, body paragraphs and conclusion remains constant, be it any kind of essay. The only difference is with the opinion. If it is an opinion based essay, only then you will include your own opinion. If it is a non-opinion based essay, then you do not have to include any opinion. And paraphrasing and synonyms are very important, because it shows that the learner has skills and can use language very flexibly. So with this, we come to an end with the session. If there is any question, any doubt, you can ask. If not, we can definitely call it a day. I hope it is clear. All right, thank you, Rajat. Then I'll see you tomorrow in the next session. Thank you so much for joining. Bye. Take care.